What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. My name is Kyle. A little bit later than normal this Friday night, but I figured Friday night is probably the perfect night to go a little bit later. Today, we're going to be going over a tragic death from an ex-Denver Broncos defensive tackle. We are going to be talking about Budda Baker seeking his contract to be paid fairly, I quote. And we are also going to talk about the NFC North hierarchy. And we're going to go over which team will reign supreme now that Aaron Rodgers is out of the NFC North. I'm super excited that this came up because, as you guys know, I was just talking about the NFC North not too long ago. We were just making a short that went out that said, don't sleep on the NFC North. I think that you're going to get a lot of really good football games out of the NFC North. And let's dive right into what the article says. This one was written by Brooks, who works for the NFL. Bucky Brooks, he's an NFL analyst. And this is what he had to say. If you expected the Green Bay Packers to wave the white flag after the departure of Aaron Rodgers, Pro Bowl offensive lineman Jenkins is here to disabuse you of that notion. Winning the division is always the standard, Jenkins said Monday on NFL Network's Good Morning Football. It's always the standard in our locker room and in our building. We feel like we're the best team in our division, and we're going to go out there every week, wherever, and show that we are the best team in the division and the best team in the NFC North. And he actually said the best team in the NFC. So, this is not a surprise to me. You have had 52 people on this team, 51 people besides Aaron Rodgers. And whether you're an Aaron Rodgers fan or not, if you had Aaron Rodgers on your team, every year you had a chance to win the Super Bowl. And Tom Grassi actually said something similar on the Rich Eisen show, which is so cool that he got to go on there. But he said, for the first time, we don't have that expectation in the building. So if the Packers are good, they're just going to be pleasantly surprised by it. But the other 51 players that have been working with Aaron Rodgers for the last, I don't know, every player is going to have a different time frame depending on when they were drafted or signed in free agency. But there is a standard of winning. And I've talked about this as the X factor. We've seen it when Patrick Mahomes' backup quarterback went in during his sprained ankle in the divisional round against the Jaguars and went on a 99-yard drive. We saw this when Jimmy Garoppolo came in for Tom Brady. We saw this when Aaron Rodgers, came in for Brett Favre. Before he was even the starter, he played tremendous. There's something mysterious about being around success. It rubs off on you. It's contagious. Okay. And then if I had to do, protagonist, like if I'm going to fight against my own argument here, I would say, well, the 1 year Peyton Manning hurt his neck, the Colts went 2-14, right? And they had the number 1 overall pick, and that's why they drafted Andrew Luck. Well, okay, so to be fair, there is an example on the other side. But I believe that the way that you turn over has a lot to do with it and the organization that's doing it. So, when Indianapolis moved off of Peyton Manning, the fan base was very split. There were many people that didn't want it. There were many people that did not embrace Andrew Luck until they started seeing that he could win. And it was the same thing with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Actually, a lot of people didn't embrace Aaron Rodgers, and then they're like, "Oh shit, this guy can actually play," right? So, what path makes the most sense for this quarterback? Okay, because what do we know so far? We know that Jordan Love is not he's a first round pick. So for what it's worth, you got to be pretty good. I believe he played at Notre Dame. But he's not Trevor Lawrence. He's not Andrew Luck, but he also had plenty of time to sit behind Aaron Rodgers and learn the effortlessness of the way Rodgers flicks the wrist. I've seen him live. It's a thing of beauty. He just has this flick and the ball goes I think when you're around somebody that's that chill, and that they approach the game in a way that makes you think as a backup, man, I'm overthinking it. Like the best, some of the best in the world, they just go out there like it's another day at the office. They flick the wrist, they throw touchdown passes. I think the poise that poise that ice in the veins type stuff that rubs off on your backup quarterback. And I think when we're trying to say the X factor, I think that's one of the main categories that we can acknowledge is that the same way stressed out quarterback rooms breed more stress. How many times have we seen quarterbacks? Oh, they switched the quarterback 3 times in the same season. This guy, back to this guy. I mean, then when you have stability, I mean, all I'm saying is when Jordan Love came in against the Eagles, he looked more than accurate, more than comfortable. He looked calm. And when you are playing at the highest stage, right, in the most popular sport in our country, and you're on primetime football, and the star quarterback gets hurt, Jordan Love would have every reason to not have been calm in that situation. But the way he handled himself, to me, that told me everything I needed to know about Jordan Love. And I thought when I saw that, I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Aaron Rodgers, but I do believe he's going to shock people because if you can be just a calm dude, we know he's got the talent, right? Some people have the talent, but they don't have the calmness, right? And then some people are too chill and they don't have the competitive edge. I know like Gardner Minshew, right? Super chill, laid back guy. Seems like the moment's never too big for him. But when you think of like your top tier competitors, he doesn't really come to mind. But he's a great guy to have on your team. Probably the best backup in the league next to Teddy Bridgewater. But if Jordan Love does come out and shock a lot of people, if he's able to combine calmness, poise, and then the athletic stuff just starts happening naturally, we are going to be very shocked, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are like, what is going on? Right. And I want to also say that it is very hard to judge somebody off one game. And I'll take you back to the end of the 2019 Denver Broncos. The Broncos had just finished the season. They had Joe Flacco starting some of the season. It was no, it was the year after that. It was Case Keenum. Okay, and Case Keenum towards the end of the season, they were like, you know what, let's throw Drew Lock in. So with 5 games left, we threw our quarterback that was a rookie, right? We threw him out there, see what we got. Well, Drew Lock made some really good throws, and he finished the season 4-1, right? So going into that offseason, I felt like Drew Lock was going to have a big step. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of Jay Cutler, right? Jay Cutler, when he was young, he had these moments where it was like, oh my gosh, what a gunslinger. You just like, you believed in him. Now, he never really got, to that Hall of Fame level, but he was definitely, worth starting every single Sunday. And you knew you had a chance to win the game. Maybe not the Super Bowl, but any regular season game. And you could have hopes for the Super Bowl, even if it wasn't very likely. Well, like I've been wrong before. Drew Lock did not turn out to be great. I still think Drew Lock in the right system, like as weird as it is, I think when Geno Smith is done playing, I think what Seattle did for Geno Smith, they could also do that for Drew Lock. Um, Drew Lock is learning, from Geno Smith what it's like to be a professional. And when you are throwing a rookie quarterback into the fire, like Denver did to end the season, okay, one or two things happens. You either perform really well, or you you find out really quick that you suck. By the way, we got Bill in the chat. Didn't know you were streaming tonight. Happy Friday. Happy to be here. I ended up getting off work yesterday at 4 a.m, and today there's a fair in town, and me and my girlfriend went there, and um, they had one of those basketball rims that are really small, and I made the first shot, and I didn't know I needed to make two to win the big animal, and I just I missed the second one, but I was not playing with the same intensity because I thought I already won. But we got a little tiny stuffed animal, but it was my first time at a fair. Um, so throwing quarterbacks into the fire. Okay, so when a perfect example of this is the Steelers, right? With Kenny Pickett. The Steelers saw enough last year where they know, okay, there's something there. I still don't believe that they know that Kenny Pickett is going to be their long-term starter. In a way, think of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is in a tier that to me feels like Kenny Pickett. Okay, so you have your quarterbacks that are definitely not your long-term starter. Like and it sucks when you are a fan of a team that has to go year in and year out without your guy, right? Because there's only a handful of those guys, right? Our Peyton Manning years, we had that guy. John Elway, we had that guy. But then you go on these long stretches where you don't have that guy, but you have guys that are going to fill in and win you enough games to not give you a high draft pick. And you need that high draft pick to get those quarterbacks that are once in a generation. Your Trevor Lawrence's, your Joe Burrows. The teams that were the worst ended up getting those guys. And when you're a really well-run organization, you can blink and an entire decade went by and none of your late first round or third round picks are working out. And especially with Denver and John Elway, he could never figure it out. I mean, Joe Flacco, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, Brock Osweiler, I mean, the list goes on and on. But what's happening with Jordan Love is an old school approach. And me and Rick talked about this when it came to Mitch Trubisky. Do you just throw your guy out there right away and see what he has? But if he doesn't do well, you don't freak out. Well, Jordan Love has had we've only seen him play 2 games in 4 years. 2. In my opinion, that is perfect for your quarterbacks that are not your Trevor Lawrence's, your Joe Burrows. Like if you draft somebody first overall, Kyler Murray, Bryce Young, you put him in right away. Like that, you don't draft someone first overall and run with the backup. Even Frank Reich tried to say, "Oh, Bryce Young's had to earn the position," and then 2 weeks later, he's like, "Oh yeah, he's our starter." Okay, so I think that what makes the Jordan Love thing intriguing is that we don't know what to expect out of him, but I do believe the ceiling is a lot higher than some people would like to admit. Okay, the ceiling is up there with Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion. And I personally think a lot of that has to do with. Have you ever met a successful family? Like, it's not a coincidence that the grandpa is successful, and then they pass down, those characteristics that make a man successful to their kids, and so on and so forth. Well, toxic, family genes, work the same way. Um, I have family members that I don't visit because if you're religious, you call it a bloodline curse. I mean, it's like it's something that gets passed down generationally that is not positive. And in the world of football, I do believe that quarterbacks can have generational talent be passed down to another generation if it's done a certain way. And that way is the way Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers did it. And it happens to be exactly what happened with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love as well. If you go off of if you need to have an all-star quarterback and you have to draft somebody that is very talented, maybe not ready to start, but definitely talented, and then you need to give them 3 or 4 years. When you do that, I think that it's more likely that he's going to be a starting worthy quarterback in the league than not. But what we see is in places that are unsuccessful, we see like Denver draft Drew Lock. Okay, a lot of talent, but he had nobody to mentor him, nobody to learn from. And then as a rookie, we just threw him out there, right? Look at Kenny Pickett. Like Kenny Pickett did pretty well considering, right, where he was drafted. I believe he was drafted in the second round. Or no, he was drafted in the first round, but only he was either drafted in the second round or he was the only quarterback drafted in the first round. But a lot of teams that draft a quarterback and throw them out there that have no one to learn from, they either fail or they succeed if they're a Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Bryce. Like if you're getting picked first overall, that's entirely different story. That's an exception. But in Jordan Love's case, I do think that he is in the best case scenario to be successful. I'm more inclined to bet on him than bet against him. And I think most of the league that has been talking about Jordan Love sounded optimistic, right? It sounded like, if he was really that good, they would have started him years ago. It's like, no, they wouldn't have because they had Aaron Rodgers. Like, if you have, if they didn't have Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he probably would have started as a rookie. So the NFC North is going to be interesting. And this is why I've made my comments about Detroit. Like, as much as we're all ready to crown them, what does Detroit look like when they're playing with expectations? We haven't seen that in, a quarter of a century. Okay. So my whole thing is stand by on the expectations with Detroit. If you want to say that they're the favorite to win the North, I can get down with that. I really can. But if Jordan Love is going to be anything remotely close to, because Aaron Rodgers did not have his best year, right? After 2 back-to-back MVP years, he had what we would call a down year, right? Um, so to think Jordan Love can't, play at the level Aaron Rodgers did last year, not an MVP Aaron Rodgers, but the level he was at last year is ridiculous to me. And the level Aaron Rodgers was at last year had the Packers fighting for a playoff spot late in the year, right? So I do think the Vikings come back, and I think the other team is Chicago, right? But the Vikings just, with the addition of Brian Flores, their defense was a disaster. So if the if the Vikings are going to be a little bit better, maybe they don't win 12 games, right? Maybe they only win 9 or 10, but 9 or 10 is enough to make the playoffs. And if you really think about it, every one of the teams in the NFC North feel like 9 or 10 wins, right? And that is why I said this division will be one of the most exciting because it is not going to be by week 9, one team is completely separated. Justin Fields with weapons and a new offensive line and another year under his belt. The Bears might surprise everybody and win 12 games. Like, I don't think that's so far-fetched to think. So, but I do think it's more realistic to say 9 or 10. And if Jordan Love is even remotely like what we saw against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football, well, then now you got the Packers in that same grouping. So the article that was written says that's not the article. Here it is about Green Bay. Simply put, 2023 projections are all over the place for the NFC North. It's the most tightly packed division in the NFL, according to Caesar's odds. With that in mind, I took some time to study each team in the NFC North. With training camp weeks away, here's how I would rank the 4 contenders in the most wide open division race. As you can see, I trust Elgton, ELGTON, TON over the odds makers. Okay. So these are the odds makers and what they're saying about the odds to win the NFC North. Green Bay, odds to win the NFC North plus 420. 420. Why the Packers can win the North? Okay, so they're going to do why each team can win the North. Okay, and once again, this article was written by Bucky Brooks, an NFL analyst. Despite the loss of 4-time MVP quarterback who cast a spell on the rest of the division throughout his starting tenure, Green Bay could reclaim the crown behind a stingy defense and a balanced offense that features Jordan Love as a complementary playmaker. The former first round pick is flanked by a talented running back tandem, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, with the potential to bedevil and bruise opponents on the ground. Factoring in the big playability with wide receiver Christian Watson, as he showcased as a rookie, the Packers have enough firepower to control the game with a balanced offense that mixes runs and play action passes. That's the offense that was run with Aaron Rodgers, right? It was very balanced. So this isn't like they're cooking up a special, new offense for Jordan Love. It's going to be a lot of the same, right? It's not going to feel like so much has changed for Jordan Love, I don't think. Keeping opposing defenses guessing at the line of scrimmage. If the defense plays up to expectations, giving its extensive collection of first-round picks on that side of the ball, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Jareer Alexander, Eric Stokes, Lucas Van Ness, who they got this year, and Darnell Savage, Green Bay could definitely nab its 9th division title since 2011. The potential Achilles heels, Love's inexperience could prevent Green Bay from climbing back to the top of the North. Although the 4th-year pro has shown significant improvement from his first regular season action in 2021, the Packers are accustomed to all-star caliber play from the quarterback position. If Love fails to make enough timely plays to extend drives or produce points, immense pressure will fall on Green Bay's defense to carry the squad to a division title. Fair enough. Fair enough. I agree with all of it. Number 2. And it's weird. So I'm trying to think. He ranked the Packers number 1. I believe he's saying that he thinks the Packers are the most likely to win the North. And that's very interesting because the odds makers for the Lions at number 2 is plus 120. And that shouldn't be surprising to you guys. I mean, we know that the Lions are the favorite. And this is what he had to say about the Lions. Dan Campbell has impressively whipped Detroit into a playoff contender with his old school methods that turn tough guys into winners. The Love smash foes with their physicality at the point of attack, particularly on offense, with ground success allowing Jared Goff to shred thin defensive backfields with pinpoint passes. The combination of force and finesse made Detroit's offense an unstoppable force for most of 2022. With the Lions finishing 4th in total offense and 5th in scoring, and the unit has even more explosive potential this year with dynamic first-round pick Jahmyr Gibbs joining the backfield and a fully healthy Jameson Williams, who was their first-round pick last year. to give the receiving corps a true speed element upon the conclusion of his 6-game suspension for gambling. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. As Ben Johnson spends more time in the lab developing creative ways to keep defenses in conflict, the Lions offensive coordinator could help his squad swipe the division crown with an attack that imposes its will on the ground and through the air. So it's the offense of Detroit that was talked about, you know? And they bolstered their defense so much, but they're still saying like the offense is the hot, that is the focal point of the Lions game this year. Defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn must find a way to keep his unit from faltering as the team's weak link. Last season, Detroit's defense was absolutely horrendous during the 1-6 start. To his credit, though, Glenn turned things around in the Lions' 8-2 finish by tweaking his personnel and implementing a schematic shift that enabled a group of young defenders to play fast and furious. That said, Detroit still finished the season ranked dead last in total defense and 28th in points allowed. On the plus side, general manager Brad Holmes fortified the unit, particularly in the secondary with a series of additions: Cameron Sutton, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, and the drafted first round Jack Campbell, who obviously they were crazy high on because that was their guy from the get-go. And second round pick Brian Branch, defensive back. The influx of talent should significantly raise the floor of the Lions defense, though Glenn has to make sure everything comes together and the chemistry is right. It looks much better on paper, but the game is played on the field. And that is that is what I've been saying about the Ravens. Looks great on paper, but the game is played on the field. Number 3, the Minnesota Vikings. Rick's not going to like that. The Vikings can repeat as division champs behind an efficient offense, headlined by an unstoppable playmaker on the perimeter. Reigning OPOTY Offensive Player of the Year, Justin Jefferson is a big play machine with the potential to take over any game at any moment. Ideally, though, he won't have to be a one-man show week in and week out. General manager nabbed a big-bodied pass catcher, TJ Hawkinson, at last year's trade deadline. And in this year's draft, Minnesota spent their first-round pick on a polished route runner, Jordan Addison. This could alleviate some of the pressure on Jefferson to consistently put the team on his back. I'm excited to see what the offense looks like in year 2 under Kevin O'Connell. The coaches began pumping up Kirk Cousins' growth in the system this offseason. It's not hard imagining an aerial circus with Cousins throwing the ball all over the yard. Minnesota could win the division by torching opponents with a high-powered offense that pushes the pace for 60 minutes. Man, I got to say, as I just read this, it seems like every year there's a team that surprises people, and then there's teams that were good last year and they pull back. It seems like because of the margin of victory or the negative point differential the Vikings had, that we all kind of agree the Vikings are going to come back. They're going to pull back. But why? They should be a better team. Like Jordan Addison is a polished route runner. He was one of the highest ranked wide receivers in the draft. TJ Hawkinson has a whole nother year in a whole nother offseason. He never even had an offseason, but now he's going to understand the offense better. Kevin O'Connell's in his second year. Their defense will be better with former head coach. I'm trying to, I just blanked on his name. I already said his name today. Honestly, like the Vikings might be that team that we're all wrong about. You know what I mean? The Vikings might be like last year. Instead of last year being a peak, right? Because it's like, well, you could never have a negative point differential and win 13 games. You could never, or 12 games. You could never do that again. Well, I think that's why we consider naturally they would have to fall back. unless they're getting better, right? That changes everything. If it's the same if it's the same team, yeah, they'll probably win 8 or 9 games. If the Vikings are a better team this year, they should probably win around 12, right? I'm literally just these are my free thoughts. I haven't thought about this, but I'm starting to feel like we've all given Minnesota um maybe not enough credit for what they are quietly putting together here. The team's offensive, and this is the potential Achilles heel. The team's offseason roster included longtime franchise stalwarts, um, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Eric Kendricks, decorated veterans Zadarius Smith and Patrick Peterson also have exited stage. I thought Patrick Peterson was staying for one more year. Where did Patrick Peterson end up going? Patrick Peterson team. Sorry, I just want to figure this out. Has he the Steelers? Oh my god, the Steelers, man. What a steal. And the Steelers drafted another corner, and that makes sense cuz Patrick Peterson's the veteran that can teach the young guy. So yeah, they're saying basically Minnesota lost a lot of their players, but honestly, they lost a lot of old dudes. Like, yeah, you can trade Adam Thielen for uh Jordan Addison. I I don't have a problem with that. Um I would be a little concerned about Zadarius Smith, Patrick Peterson, and Dalvin Cook, but you know, as long as you got the defensive coordinator right, it should be a better defensive squad. Brian Flores, that's his name, was an inspired offseason hire, but the new defensive coordinator takes over a unit hurting for experience and will expertise in key spots: pass rusher, middle linebacker, and cornerback. This will force Coach Flores to utilize a smoke and mirrors approach that features a myriad of blitzes and games to mask the unit's deficiencies. While the new defensive coordinator is a masterful technician and strategist, Minnesota may simply lack the Jimmies and the Joes to make Flores' X's and O's come to life. Okay. And this one's for Rick. Fourth place. I'm sorry, Rick. I really am. And you know what? I wouldn't put Chicago fourth. I would probably, I mean, if we're being honest, like, I think it's why do we have to rank them? Like, can we just put them all at like 2 and 3 and just leave out 1 and 4? The Bears can win the North because Justin Fields showcased explosive ability last season. Chicago might have set him up for a true star turn by substantially fortifying his support cast this offseason. DJ Moore gave the Bears a true number one receiver, capping off pass catching corps that already featured Cole Kmet, Chase Claypool, and Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney he's a really good number two. And now you got Chase Claypool and DJ Moore. Like, this is a good receiving group. With the Bears also upgrading the offensive line, first round pick Darnell Wright and free agent guard Nate Davis. In the running game, free agent Dante Foreman and the fourth rounder Rashawn Johnson. Fields could be poised to take a major leap forward in Luke Getsy's offense. If the third-year pro improves as a passer, Chicago could emerge as a dark horse that takes the division to a worst to first turnaround. And yeah, I totally agree. The potential Achilles heel is, despite the buzz created by the Bears' offensive potential, Matt Eberflus squad will only realize its playoff dreams if the under Harold defense plays up to the standards in the Windy City. The defense. General Manager Ryan Poles signed linebackers Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, and free agency to add more speed and playmaking potential to the unit. but the lack of established pass rush could limit the duo's impact. Although Eberflus is not afraid to incorporate secondary defenders into the pass rush, rookie safety Jaquan Brisker led the team with 4 sacks last season. It's hard to rely on blitz pressure to get the job done against offenses with elite playmaking personnel on the perimeter. Until Chicago solves its pass rush dilemma, the one dimensional team faces an uphill climb back to the top of the division. Yeah. And I've already told you, how I'm feeling about this NFC North, and I couldn't have said it any better. There's not really any secrets or anything to reveal at this point. We just need September to kick off. Um, it could be any one of these teams. And that is the truth. Like, it could be the Bears that win 12 games. It could be the Vikings that, under Brian Flores, win 12 games. It could be Jordan Love and the Packers that win maybe 10 or 11 games, right? What we have to remember too is we're talking about winning the North, but we're not necessarily talking about making the playoffs. The NFC is a very weak conference right now, right? It's the opposite of the AFC. You could win 9 games and go to the playoffs if you're in the NFC, right? I mean, Arizona's not going, right? I don't even know what to do with the Rams because they went Super Bowl to 6 wins, so just ignore that. Seattle, yeah, they'll probably get a wild card spot. And then 49ers, I think they'll be a first or second seed. And then you have, I'll take 2 out of the NFC East. And I won't tell you who they are right now, but I would probably go, if I had to pick right now, I'm probably thinking, well, Philly for sure. But then it's between the Cowboys and the Giants. And whoever wins week 1, I'll take that team. And I mean, what division are we forgetting? Oh yeah, the Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Bucks. Who knows, man? Maybe the Panthers. I think Atlanta's has the best roster, so I'd maybe go Atlanta. But my point is, there's 2 divisions that, besides whoever wins by default, second place is not getting a wild card spot, and it's probably that division. Like, whoever just like last year, like Tampa goes in because they have to have one, but none of the other were fit for a wild card spot. So if Chicago or Green Bay is able to squeak 9 or 10 wins out, a 10-7 season, even a 9-8 season, it's very likely that we're going to see them in the playoffs, So it's going to be a freaking blast to see how it unfolds. I don't know if you guys are aware that Budda Baker still hasn't been paid. I know we talked about it. It was a big deal. And then, just like it normally does, nothing happens for a while and we forget about it. Well, Budda Baker plans to attend training camp following his trade request, which is really good news for the Cardinals, who have really nothing right now to be super happy about. I mean, they still are stuck in Kyler Murray's contract, which hasn't proven to be a good contract yet. They have a new head coach. They got a good offensive lineman in the first round, but you know what I mean? Like, when that's on the list of what you're super excited about, nothing against offensive line. But Cardinal safety Budda Baker requested a trade in April without any traction in the direction of getting traded. He attended the team's mandatory mini camp in June and plans to be at the training camp in July. So the 5-time Pro Bowler hopes he'll be doing so with a contract that pays him fairly for what he brings to the table. And Mike Garafolo reported Friday on Good Morning Football, per Baker's agent, David Malugata, in terms of what Baker feels is fair, or in terms of what Baker feels is a fair price, he's not asking to be the highest paid safety. But instead, he desires an extension that proves the Cardinals see him as a long-term part of their future plans, right? And honestly, like at this point, I don't think the Cardinals deserve, Buda Baker. Like, if you watch the Hard Knocks, you know that Buda Baker is the heart and the soul of that defense, right? If he doesn't get a long-term extension, like, I don't know who does. Like, Buda Baker not only is the heart and soul of that, he's the heart and soul of the entire team. And it's supposed to be your quarterback, but it's not, right? It's not Kyler Murray. It's Buda Baker. The fact that he has to even do this holdout to me is, I mean, good on him for even showing up to mandatory, training camp, because I feel like if the product, like when you're giving everything off the field, on the field, I feel like those things should just work themselves out. And unfortunately, the Cardinals are in this standoff with him. I don't know what Arizona's plans are for Buda Baker, whether it's to keep him, um, not restructure the contract, but the pact is 3 years old now, and Baker's 2 remaining years under contract have no guarantee salary. So, as for his place in Arizona, Buda is one of the most dynamic pieces on either side of the ball, and he's going to be looking to get paid. He enters 2013 with the best PFF defensive grade, 73.7 of any defender on the roster from 2022. I could have guessed that. But 6 years into his NFL career, he has 7 picks, 34 pass defended, 6 forced fumbles. That's 1 a year, 5 fumble recoveries, and 650 tackles. Should the Cardinals want to keep acquiring those numbers in Arizona for years to come, perhaps the offseason will conclude in a new deal. If not, Baker's April request is still looming. So, I mean, I think that Buda should have no problem getting this contract, but Bill had something to say, but he said the new Cardinals GM seems like a smart guy. Watch their behind the scenes draft video. Maybe they can get better. And I mean, when you talk about get better, I was going to say, like, get better at what? Like, personnel, get better on the field. Um, and really, it's all the above. Like, when you are the worst team in the NFL, like Sean Payton said about the Broncos, there's a lot of dirt on your fingers, right? There's a lot of people that have something, that they can improve on. Whether it's the training staff, it's the way they prepare. Preparation is huge. Um, the way an entire building is ran, and this is how I heard it on the Pat McAfee show. Mark Schlereth was just on it talking about Peyton and what he's done. He said, there's 2 types of fears. There is the fear, like, if you don't do a really good job, you're going to get fired, right? I call that an unhealthy fear, a leverage fear. But then there's the fear that is a reverence, right? And this is what this is his words, but he said this is like when the Bible talks about fearing the Lord, it's about reverence. So what Sean Payton has done is he has come into the league to Denver, and there's a healthy fear of him, and it's because they respect him, right? It's that seeking that approval. It's like you want him to look happily at you. You want him to view you as an overall net positive. You don't want to be on his, what they call his shit list, right? So, I mean, little things like I told you 2 episodes ago that he went into the cafeteria and was like, "What the hell is going on in here? Like, why are there people taking business trips in the media? Why are these all they're not supposed to be in the cafeteria." You know what I mean? Like, what kind of clown show is going on in here? This is for the players. This is so if they want to come in, they don't got to worry about dressing up or changing their outfit. They can come in their underwear and get some food and talk about the game plan without having to wonder if somebody's leaking over their shoulder the news on Twitter. Um, what the Cardinals have to fix is everything, right? Um, when you have a season where you're the worst in the league or you're one of the 5 worst, there's not going to be a quick fix unless you hire one of the best coaches in the world. And unfortunately for the Cardinals, that coach that I think could have done it, he joined the Denver Broncos. Very fortunate for me, but I just don't see how any coach, I mean, even what's his name, D'Amico Ryans for the Texans. I don't expect him to just change everything immediately. It's going to take a lot of time, right? But Andy Reid, his first year in Kansas City, the Chiefs were getting their crap together, right? So the the Cardinals situation right now is very interesting because we saw the Cardinals good, right? And then they fell apart. They were 6-0 in 2020. Um, they were 6-0 and they played Green Bay on Sunday Night Football and they lost. And it was like the Cardinals were an undefeated team, man. They were like one of the only undefeated teams in the league. They were trending uphill. And it seems like somewhere along the bumpy road, something happened. And none of us could really like they had a lot of injuries, right? But it just still seems kind of weird how fast that turnaround happened where, now we're like, yeah, the Cardinals probably will have the worst record in the NFL. Like, do they still have their franchise quarterback? Like, is Kyler Murray that guy? Like, can he go out there and turn this whole thing around? Like, why does one and they're doing the same thing with Russ, man. Like, we saw Kyler Murray play good football. Like, why does last year take it all away? Like, why does last year, wash everybody's brains of when we've seen Kyler Murray play at a high level, right? We have seen those moments from him. So I do go into this league with the Cardinals being a very interesting team, you know, because they say like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? So like the Cardinal, like once it's a fluke, twice it's a habit, or whatever you analogy you want to say. The Cardinals have their pass. They have their 1 year pass where if they can switch it up, you know what I mean? We're gonna forget all about that. But if they have another year this year like last year, they are officially on, a long path to the top, which is just crazy to think of how fast that can happen. Especially for the fan base. One moment you're like, we're gonna host a playoff game, and then 15 games later, you're the worst team in the NFL, one of the worst. Crazy. And then Bill said, oh, sorry, I hit that one already. He said, being not a shit team, LOL. Monty Ossenfort, 100% everything needs to be fixed. And another thing that needs to be fixed in the NFL is the players gambling, right? And we've talked about it when Calvin Ridley, got in trouble for his gambling. That was like a big boom, an entire year. We're like, holy crap, like he has to get reinstated. Or no, because it wasn't indefinite. It was just the entire season. But still, man, it was crazy. Well, like, unfortunately, that's not going to be a wake up call. And this is starting to seem like um this is going to be like getting a DUI. Everybody knows you can't drink and drive, right? But people are going to do it. And this is just the new thing, right? We're kind of new to the sports gambling world. It wasn't legal. Now you got players taking a shit in the morning on DraftKings, right? And they're like, who's going to catch me? And I'm sure there's a whole lot of people that aren't going to get caught. Honestly, if they had any brains, they would just get their brother to do it for them. Why do they have to do it themselves? Like, I live in Washington State. I can't even place a bet here. My uncle lives in Tennessee. Of course, I call him on Sunday morning, give him the 7-game parlay, send him the $10 in Cash App. Like, that's not illegal. So I don't know. Like, obviously, I don't normally I don't go out in the streets here and I'm like, I'm gambling all the way from Washington. You know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure, if he keeps the money or I send him money, like that's not illegal. I hope so because I just told the entire world. Um, in the when gambling was illegal, we called those bookies, but now we're using legal avenues to do it, right? It's like if you know somebody sent me $20 from Florida, I could go to the weed store 1 block from my house and buy some weed. Totally legal. I can't send it back to him, but I can buy it. So as long as nobody's sending me money, for the games that are won, I'm not technically breaking any rules. And I feel like the players need to start thinking like criminals. If they're going to be a criminal, you got to think like a criminal. You got to be a smart criminal. Like Demarius Taylor, Isaiah Rogers, Rashad Berry, Nicholas Perrette Furry. Like I don't even know who these guys um, are suspended indefinitely. Oh my goodness. Through at least the conclusion of 2023 for betting on the 2022 season. So these guys were gambling on NFL games in 2022. Nicole Piet-Ferrier of the Tennessee Titans is suspended for the team's first 6 regular season games of the 2023 season. The thing that makes football different than, let's say, tennis, right? If somebody said, "Hey, like you can't gamble on tennis matches," and you do it, or golf, right? Individual sports, it's a team sport. So you have your decisions that you make, but they don't affect you, right? They affect the people that you play with. They affect the starting lineup. They affect the fan base. They affect the reputation of the team. Like there's a fine line between making, yeah, let's say, hey, you make a mistake, you have to live with the consequences, right? But as soon as other people have to live with your consequences, you have no right to take that risk, right? It's like, where do my rights end and yours begin, right? You can't jump in a pile of mud and give me a hug in my white shirt and me not be mad that you got me dirty, right? And that's kind of what makes the NFL a little bit different. As much as I'm always like, hey, you know, do whatever you can get away with. Take your chances. I mean, I wouldn't. If you come to me for advice, I'll tell you no. But like at the end of the day, you're going to have to make your own decisions and you're going to do it anyway. But in team sports, it's no different than any team type of job, right? You have to, if you're not going to make the right decision for you, make it for the people that you work with. Make it for those teammates, right? There's like I used to struggle going to the doctor, and people I love would be like, "Hey, if you're not going to do physical therapy for yourself, do it for me." Right? I think some of these people, they need maybe more of a team aspect, maybe more team bonding. I really think like some of that stuff could get rid of this because as I read these players' names, I don't even know who they are. You know what I mean? And they probably, if I don't know who they are, then they're probably not well known. They're probably not getting invited to, the Patrick Mahomes cookout and all that kind of stuff. And I think if I was working for an NFL team and somebody came to me and like, how can we reduce the risks of our team, getting in trouble for gambling, the first thing I would say is we need to have, mandatory team bonding. You know what I mean? Not with us there, like no front office, no coaches. Like we need to just let them go out and, become best friends. So nobody asked me, but that's what I would do. And Rogers, Berry, and Taylor can petition for reinstatement at the conclusion of 2023. The Colts waived Rogers and Berry following the announcement today, and this is what they said. We have made the following roster moves as a consequence of the determination that these players violated the league's gambling policy. Colts general manager Chris Ballard said in a statement following the release of Rogers and Berry, the integrity of the game is of the utmost importance. And as an organization, we will continue to educate our players, coaches, and staff on the policy in place and the significant consequences that may occur with violations. And I know he's just saying that because he has to. Like, nobody needs to be educated at this point. Like, everybody knows you can't do it. Like, there's nothing else to further educate. Like, I had a job. Well, Bill knows what the job was, but I had a very important job, I would say. And in the bathroom, there would be all these signs all around. It would say, "You earned it. Don't lose it." And it's like a guy getting handcuffs on his wrist. And they just put these signs everywhere. You know what I mean? Every category you can think of: drinking, driving, harassment, domestic violence, like everything, just signs all over the place. And I tell you, 100% of the people that are in this institution, in this place, know all of that. I never once was like taking a piss and I was reading one of these and I was like, I was going to drink and drive tonight, but now I'm not going to. And, it's the same thing with gambling. Like that's why I said I would make it, we need a team bond more, because that's a real solution, I believe, versus we need to sit down and, do a 10-minute class on what can happen if you gamble. Like Calvin Ridley was our 10-minute class. We already saw what happens. We lose millions of dollars. He's got to apologize. He gets kicked off of his team. He can't play for a year. Like, I don't know, man. I just feel like at this point, there's nothing else to learn. Bill said, people risking millions to win $1,000 bet is the height of stupidity. Bookies can't be tracked for tax purposes. Big betting websites can. Oh, that see, Bill gets it. You gotta think like, if you're gonna do it, be smart. I feel like my parents always told me that. If you're gonna do something dumb, then be smart about it. And then the last thing that I wanted to go, how are we doing on time? We're at 57 minutes, right? Man, today is flying by. I love that when that happens. Chubb. Let's see what this Browns running back Nick Chubb doesn't think his production will be hindered by Deshaun Watson. Yeah, we can close out with this. Deshaun Watson was a top 3 quarterback, top 5 undisputedly before the crap hit the road, right? So what do we make of Deshaun Watson? Well, if Deshaun Watson, okay, I'm sorry. Let me back up and say one more thing. Deshaun Watson's prime and Lamar Jackson's prime, I'm taking Deshaun Watson, right? And Deshaun Watson was that quarterback that turned it and franchise completely around, right? We were talking about that earlier. John Harbaugh always had the Ravens contending, right? Hard to evaluate a quarterback. We know he was really good. We know he broke all the records, but Deshaun Watson joined the Texans and he got them into the playoffs like 2 years later with 12 wins. I mean, like Deshaun Watson was like a legitimate long-term franchise quarterback. Like, can we sign him to a 10-year deal type guy? Okay. If the Ravens thought Lamar Jackson was that guy, it wouldn't have taken so long, for them to be like, what do you want? Sure. Here it is. Playing hardball with your franchise quarterback, that doesn't make sense. And then eventually they were like, we're going to suck if we don't do this. So good for Lamar. But if Deshaun Watson can get back to his prime, like last year, just the emotional stress, we saw how Tom Brady played with his divorce on his mind. Deshaun Watson, what if he goes back to his form? Like, we can't rule that out. Okay. If the Browns, and this is what people said about Baker Mayfield, they said anybody could have taken that team to the playoffs. They're loaded. Okay. Well, if that's true and Deshaun Watson gets back to his prime, what does that say about the Browns? Should they be in the Super Bowl? Like, are they a Super Bowl? Is that your team? We're talking about which team are we sleeping on? Is it the Browns? Can somebody, the Browns, can you tell us, is it you? Are you the ones that are going to win 13 games this season and having, 8 wins in a row in the middle of the season? Maybe. Maybe they will. And it would not shock me at all. But it all depends on Deshaun Watson getting back to his form. And Nick Chubb is obviously being fielded questions about this because it does affect the running game. So this is what Nick Chubb said. You can't really look at the numbers, Chubb said. 12 is the most I've ever had since I've been there, talking about touchdowns. I don't think it's had I don't think it had much to do with it. I think we had to figure some things out, get the kinks out of the offense, and I don't think I'm hindered by Deshaun at all. No, I'm not worried at all. I can't control what I can't control. When the ball's in my hands, I have full control, so I'm not worried about anything. And another big question about Cleveland is Kareem Hunt, right? Like, are they going to re-sign Kareem Hunt? Is Kareem Hunt going to be playing somewhere else? I'm intrigued about that because I do think some of Nick Chubb's success had to do with Kareem Hunt, right? That was the best running back duo in the league, hands down, right? It wasn't particularly close anywhere. Um maybe I mean, no, it's not close. So, Cleveland's offense as a whole wasn't great once Watson entered the lineup, and visions of a wide open attack gave some Brown fans the hope that their team would be much more productive in 2023. The downside though is that Chubb might not factor into that output very much, prompting some in Cleveland to wonder whether the Browns should trade Chubb. I don't I don't think so. Who was I guess Deshaun Watson, I can't remember a running back that was playing for the Texans. Um who was Deshaun Watson's running back in 2017? Here's the roster. Sorry, yeah, I'm starting to understand the question because 22 because if they're going to switch over to an offense that doesn't have, Chubb getting 30 touches a game, honestly, I don't think that's smart. You got to lean into your strengths. But the running back was Lamar Miller. He had 238 rushes for 888 yards, only 3 touchdowns. So, they could be onto something. Oh, when did Deshaun get drafted? 2018, huh? They probably kept the same running back. So, 2018, the running back was Lamar Miller again. He had 210 rushes for 973 yards, so not even cracking 1,000. And Deshaun Watson, as a rookie, had over 4,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions, and over half of 1,000 yards rushing. If he can get back to that form, they could win their division. But now I'm going to go with the Bengals, but they could definitely, creep up in that. Bill saying, I disagree a little bit on the betting and education. On the betting, if you are on the road in a hotel used by the team, that becomes a team facility. Kind of messed up. I can see where that would be an oops. Oh, okay, okay. So maybe yeah, there's some like I feel like though the simple way to do this is to tell your team not to gamble. I mean, it's like just don't do it. It's like that scene in Walk the Line Don't think about saying about touching it. Don't sing about it. Don't think about it. Don't touch it. And I really, I really think that just needs to be the message. Like, when in doubt, just don't do it. Like, if you have to stop and be like, technically, is it? No, no. But I see what you're saying. I guess if you're going to do it, maybe a little education would be nice, because obviously there's some gray lines in there, gray areas in there. And then Bill said, but for everything else, I'm with you. Just don't do it. Absolutely. So I'm really excited to do my division predictions here pretty soon. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be really, really tough because, I mean, like, there's just so many curveballs that we have to figure out. Deshaun Watson, eventually, I have to go from, you know, saying things like he could be really good, or he could, be a little bit better than. Eventually, I'm going to have to take a stance, right? And that's what's really hard. Um, Same thing with Jordan Love. Like, I can see a route where he's really good. I can see, him just being media. Like, I'm going to have to pick a stance. And the same thing with the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. Like, there's a lot of very interesting things happening. The Giants, I'm going to have to take a stance, right? The Cowboys, the Giants, so they can't all get in. I mean, last year they all got in, 3 teams, but to think that that's going to happen again might not be very likely. Although if it was going to happen, it would be in the NFC. Um, so I'm going to announce that pretty soon. And I wanted to announce one more thing. I got it written down right here. Actually, I got it by heart. I'm not going to announce every game that we're going to be at, right? But the games I want to announce, I wanted to share with you guys because I think it's going to be exciting, because not only are we going to these games, but the equipment that I've purchased now is going to allow me to set up a table in front of the stadium and talk about the game. I'm going to be doing like NFL Sunday morning, like pregame, right? We're going to do every Sunday. We're going to go through every game. We're going to do our predictions. We're going to keep record. We're going to talk about the storylines. We're going to talk about fantasy. We're going to do all of that, but we're going to be in front of a different stadium. Okay. So week 1, I was leaning towards going to New York and seeing the Jets at MetLife. And I decided to hold off on that one. And the reason is because I want to be at Sean Payton's first game as a Denver Bronco. And I feel like that's where I belong after pondering for a long time what to do. That is where I found the most peace, is week 1. I've never been to a Denver Broncos season opening game. Week 1, Raiders at Broncos, Sean Payton's first game. We're going to be in Denver, bringing all the content right there. Week 2, I'm going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. The Kansas City Chiefs at Jacksonville Jaguars, a really fun divisional game last year. I think it's going to be a sneak peek of a playoff game in the future. And that game I'm going to be at. Week 3, and now, mind you, Denver's probably going to be 2-0. I think they can beat the Raiders, and I think they can beat the Commanders in week 1 and week 2. So Denver's first real big test, Denver at Miami. I'm going to be in South Florida, going to go in, same deal, outside that game. Week 4, Thursday night, I will be in Green Bay for the Detroit Lions at Green Bay. The Week 18 revenge game, if you will. And that's going to be our first look at Jordan Love live in action. And then that same week, so that's Thursday night. So then Sunday, 3 days later, the Broncos are playing the Bears. I'm getting Rick, and we're going to that game. He's a Bears fan. I'm a Broncos fan. It just makes sense, right? So those are 5 games that I'll give you. There's much, much more exciting ones coming, but I don't want to reveal them all right now. But that's a little bit of what you can expect from Only Football during the beginning of the seasons, along with our regular weekly episodes. Like nothing's changing. It's just an extra thing that we're doing. So I'm super excited for the season to start. We're weeks away from training camp. Happy July if you're on the East Coast. We only got one more month and we can start watching preseason and get this thing rolling. So, Bill, thank you for being in here. I know it was a late episode, but I appreciate you guys from everywhere that you're watching, wherever you're watching. If you could like this video, please. Our algorithm, we're starting to get it back. I live streamed a game. It was a Giants Patriots Super Bowl, and YouTube put me in timeout. And to be honest, I didn't think it was a big deal because the game is over a decade old, and I didn't know that was a rule. So I got slapped on the wrist. The algorithm got a little jacked up. They didn't tell me they were going to do that, but how do you go from 4,000 views on a short to 27, right? But we're starting to beat it. I can tell that YouTube's starting to trust me again. So we will be doing no more of that. I got to stay out of the doghouse here. I love this channel too much to lose it over something dumb. So, but yeah, if you could like this, comment on the video, that would be great. And I will see you guys in 2 days on Monday. Until then, go Broncos. See ya.